I'm Kamerie Gibson. Welcome to the Kamerie Gibson Show, the podcast. I believe that one of the most precious gifts you can share with someone is your story. Pain has purpose and stories can change lives. Your journey to become more inspired and transformed by the lives of those around us starts now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kamerie Gibson Show, where we talk about transforming our pain into power. And today I have a special, powerful, unhinged guest with me here today. His name is Greg Norwood. Greg, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm Greg from the best city in the world, Houston, Texas. Originally from Milwaukee. I'm an organizer, an activist, an advocate, and show enough brother. And I'm glad to be talking with you.
Yes. Thank you so much. So I did learn that you were from Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So I need you to paint us a picture of what Milwaukee is and has to offer.
Oh, Milwaukee is a big little town. Um, Very much this really unique mix of big city life with that small town Wisconsin feel. That is the glamorous, positive side. It is also one of the most segregated cities in the country. And the neighborhood that I was reared, the 53206 neighborhood, is considered one of the most dangerous in the country to raise a family. There's been documentaries about it. People have written about it. That was my backyard, and so Milwaukee has a very interesting history, a very interesting legacy of racism and classism and segregation. But in that, there is a certain unity amongst Black people specifically. By force, for sure, we had to learn how to get it on our own. But that has transferred over my life over into Houston and learning how to really build community with people and understand where they are, where they're coming from, how we can move them forward. I learned those things in the hood of Milwaukee and continue that even now.
Okay, so excuse me, following up on that, right?
Yeah.
Milwaukee, what was the name of the section you're from again?
Zip code is 53206.
Okay.
53206, yeah.
Okay, got you. What has it been like leaving the hood, right? Leaving your community, your environment, your neighborhood. What has it been like for you and being careful to not be stagnant by it,
Mm.
if that makes sense? Because
Yeah,
I'm from
yeah.
I'm from South Central, and for the longest, I was like, Kamerie, like I'm from South Central, but I know I'm bigger than South Central. It's deeper than that, right? Like, and I don't know. I want to know what's it been like for you?
Yeah, yeah, sure. That's a really good question. I think about I left. God has been good, so I don't have to live in that kind of environment anymore. I grew up very poor, working class, borderline poor. Lights off multiple times a year, things like that. So that was my upbringing, and now that's not something I even have to think about worrying about. And that's because of God's grace. Nothing that I've done, it's all grace. Um, so I'm out the hood, but the hood ain't really out of me. And what I mean by that is there's a certain level of tenacity, what's the word I'm looking for? Ingenuity, um, creativity, cleverness. That cleverness, I don't know if that's a word, but it is today, that you find in the hood. And if we, particularly Black people, can look past some of the challenges that come with the hood, which is really an interesting term, but if we look past that stuff and really look at how systems and structures would have it so that we don't survive, And the hood is really just a testament of survival amidst a country and empire whose um, goal determination is to kill us. That's the hood. And so keep keep that, walk with that, that fight or flight, that get it or get gone, that ride or die, all that stuff that is foundational to what we call the hood is incredible skills and incredible um, things to have. Flip side of that, and I'm talking too long, cut me off. But the flip side of that is there are systems and structures that are in place to keep us secluded and marginalized. And that's how you get what we call the hood. Um, and people, and it's systemic. I'm not blaming the people. This is the purpose. The goal is for people to get stuck there. The goal is for people to not be able to dream bigger than that. And one of the things I always knew, even as a young kid, was that there was more. I just had to go find it because it wouldn't come to me. And the biggest problem with some of my friends and family members who are still in that space, mentally and even physically, is exposure. It's exposure. I had to move 800 miles away to get some exposure, and I'm not. That's not everybody's testimony, but that's mine. And so, and I think it's on us who did make it out, whatever that means, who did get out of that, to not be afraid to go back and extend a hand to someone who was also looking to get out. And even that kind of is foundational to our existence in these neighborhoods.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm thinking, when did you know that you were different? What
Ooh,
moment was it? Were you a kid when you knew, like, yeah, I'm not like everybody
yeah.
else? I have a different vision.
I don't think I knew that's like a couple years ago. I think I knew that I was different conceptually. Like I knew the concept conceptually that I was different. I knew that I didn't like to do some of the things that other people were doing. I knew that I didn't like when people were wanting to like go jump off like roofs. I was like, I'm gonna go read this book. Like I was just, I was very that, wearing dress shoes to school. It was a lot. But viscerally, like in my gut, in my body, I didn't think I knew I was different. And so it was hard to detach. Even though I was doing things differently, it was hard to detach. And it was hard to see myself in this like higher standard of living. I mean, it really was. Until a couple years ago. And, I think having community is really important for that. People had to tell me consistently that you are not a product of your past, that you are not a, you know, uh, whatever consequence of your of whatever decisions, whatever the case may be. People had to tell me that, and then I had to start believing it. So, kind of pausing parenthetically to suggest that like community is critical, and getting people who can speak into you and visionaries who can speak past what you actually are. Because people were telling me I was different before I really knew what that meant, before I even was actually different. And so, um, but yeah, I think I'll say probably like 21, 22 is when I realized I was different. And once I realized it, my life changed dramatically in so many ways. In so many ways, it changed. But yeah, viscerally, I had to get it, and that came with community and people speaking into me and speaking, um, you know, past what was my current circumstances.
Did you face any criticism, restraint, frustration from people around you as you've evolved into who you're becoming?
Absolutely, absolutely, and par for the course. And I think that the biggest thing that I experienced was this like real sense of like loneliness and isolation, because I no longer fed into the system. Like I wasn't just a clog in the wheel. I was trying to find my way. I was doing all these different things, and because of that, you get the people that say, "Oh, you're acting different now." You know, "Oh, you don't got time no more." Like, no, I'm sorry, I don't got time for what you got time for no more. You know, things like that. I think that at the time it felt like isolation, but what God really was doing was taking me through some development, and I needed to do that alone. And on the flip side of that, I now have a community of people that I wouldn't have imagined I'd have, you know. And certainly those people wouldn't have come had I stayed comfortable in the predicament and the people I was with. But yeah, definitely felt that. And still, even now, changing, growing, maturing. There are still people who are falling off. And like, that's okay. You know, that's all right.
You know, while you were speaking about feeling lonely
Mm-hmm.
when we almost get like pushed out of the group, but like naturally almost is the case, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you're thinking a different way, like, or you're dressing differently. It's making us feel different. I don't like
Right.
this, you know? And I'm like, why do we care? Why do we care? But earlier when we were talking off the record, we were talking about community and building community and how important it is to us as people to have community. So even when
Yeah.
we're growing, those growing pains are almost inevitable because at one point we were attached to what those people thought about us,
Yeah.
to how they validated us and our ideas, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a breakup you're having as you grow. And I think some people avoid elevating because of those heartbreaks that you are gonna
That's
have.
exactly it. I was just going to say, like, that validation will keep you stuck, you know? And that's why I mentioned when you asked about what did I know, I knew conceptually, but I didn't know viscerally. And so I was doing different, but I wasn't going nowhere. You know, it was like my friends, you know, had a Honda and I had a Nissan. And so it was different, but we were still in the same space. It wasn't nothing different. You know, it was till I realized that, oh, my Nissan got gas. I can go. That's, you know, that's that visceral. That's that in my body. I knew I was different. And, you know, but a lot of that was connected to me not wanting to really accept the fact that I was different because if I'm different, then this like environment, this space that I'm in ain't really ain't conducive to that. And that's a hard pill to swallow. You know, lifelong friends are now strangers because of, you know, just we're not in the same space. And that's okay. That's okay. I've learned to accept that and learn that, you know, God has a way of replenishing and replacing any and everything and any and everybody that may be kind of chopped off in the process of our healing, deliverance, growth, maturation, all those different
I really love that. I really, really like that a lot. Replenishing and you said replacing, right?
things. Yeah, replenishing, replacing.
Okay. Because,
Yeah,
yeah, replacing, we need replenishing too. Like, people try to make
absolutely.
it seem like it's easy to let go of people that you hung out with, but it's not. The
It's
John
not
Morant young man, like, you see all the time athletes having a hard time leaving the hood, getting out the streets when they got all this money. It's
correct.
it might be the absence of that visceral awakening, possibly, you know, since you've been speaking
Yep,
about that a lot. Like you can be awakened in one part, but the other part still may be taking its time.
yep.
What experiences were you having while growing up with your family that ultimately I would say led you to wanting to cultivate community? That makes sense.
Mm, yeah. No, so growing up was actually difficult for a number of reasons. I mentioned growing up in a very marginalized, underserved, under resourced community. And that led to violence and all those different things. And I said those words very intentionally. I didn't grow up in a dangerous neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood that didn't have the resources to be healthy. And that makes a difference. But also, my family life wasn't the best. I had a mother who struggled with alcoholism for many years. She's clean and sober now, has been for quite a bit of time, but for many years she struggled with alcoholism. And I had a very present but absent father. And folk who got that know what that means, of being in the house but not being present. So grew up with that. And as the oldest, I took on a lot of the parenting. There's a psychological word, I guess you can call it, and that's parentified children, parentified child rearing, whatever, where a child becomes the parent in spaces of absent parents. What that really meant is I grew up really fast. And had to learn how to take care of a family at a very young age. And I think that was very defining for me. That, and I think I'm losing your question, but it was very defining for me, and I think very. Um, as I look back now, I see why I needed that. Um, but at the time, it was very difficult. But I want to make sure I answer your question because I feel like I'm losing it.
You're answering it. So the you had an absence home, absent parents in your home.
Yeah,
Um, you like to be in the community now. You like organizing. You were
that's
involved
what it
in
was. Yeah.
church, right? So you're making the connection.
Yeah, that I knew I was losing it because I was about to start saying a whole bunch of other stuff that had nothing to do with it. But no, this community piece was like critical because as this princified child in this space, I was often isolated from friends. I worked a lot. I've worked 30 plus hours since I was like 16, like without stop. There was a time in high school, so and I can say this now because I got my degrees, but in high school, I would like mid school, I would like sneak out the back door to go to work, and would work for you know until like 11 o'clock at night, and still maintain decent grades. I didn't get the honor course when I graduated, but I got about that mug, so that's all that mattered. So ain't nobody actually done had honor course yet, so I'm doing okay. But I got about that, and but that community, I never went to homecoming, I never went to prom. I didn't go on dates till I got to become an adult and like got to Houston. I didn't do any of that stuff. And it was because I literally worked, I went to church, and I went home because I had brothers and sisters who were, depending on me to at least get us through the day. And so all those things were very difficult. And what, looking back, all those things, work, church, and not really having anything outside of that, that was community. And these were people who were incredible mentors, people who spoke into my life, people who prayed for me, and people who taught me how to, be a worker and to have a work ethic. Like all these people who were not necessarily the community that I wanted, um, were were incredible in helping me become the person that I am. And so when I think about being in a community and I think about uh, what community should look like, I had the group of people who were what they were and weren't really speaking into me. I had the group of people who propelled me and pushed me. And if I look back, even though those were the people that I felt a little bit um, disconnected to, these are the people that were really helping me. And so even in this space now, when I think about building community, I'm thinking about finding those people that not only I can pour into, but that pour into me. Uh, and that's really important.
Wow, what a responsible, young man to be doing
Yeah,
that. That's young.
had to be, had to be, or we was going to be somewhere in the gutter. And so I had to be in, and it was certainly the community that I did have that God blessed me with. that allowed me to do that at the level in which I did, even at the age of like, 15, 16, 17.
What was your relationship like with your siblings?
Very princified, as I mentioned. It was very, my sister told me not too long ago that I'm like a father figure, um, which is not what it's supposed to be necessarily, but it just is what it is, and that's how all my siblings are. I'm pretty young, but I have an old soul. That is both God given and just the way in which I had to operate, where I did have to grow up really, really fast. And my siblings are still struggling to find their way, but I am hopefully setting the standard. So some of that is still this space of being the example, being the father, because we, love my dad, but he's still very much there, but not there, and having to navigate that, particularly as we get older, and into adulthood, you know, all those things. And so I think I'm still in that space of being the parent, the guardian, so to speak.
Have you been able to forgive your parents for their behaviors, ultimately putting you in the position to parent yourself and your siblings?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a deep question. That's a deep question. It has been easier to forgive. I've, I'm learning that it's been easier to forgive my mother than it is my father. I think both. I got to a space where I stopped looking at them as parents and I started looking at them as humans. And if I read the litany of challenges that they had from birth to now, it's innumerable. I mean, and no help, no resources, no counseling. It's just get through it, get to the next day. And I think they came to marriage with a lot of baggage, a lot of trauma, a lot of unhealed, um, just stuff. And I think the expectation was marriage would heal it, but marriage illuminated it. And then they had children, and then all that trauma and baggage was passed down. And so now we're in this cyclical kind of trauma bubble, so to speak. And so but to get back to your question, if I'm looking at it from these are humans and I'm thinking about, all the challenges that they had, I'm like, I get why this happened, right? And it's not to excuse or to justify, it's to say, I get it. Could life be life? And parents aren't exempt from life. And there is a responsibility to understand how to, get the help that you need and things like that. But 80s and 90s, that it was still taboo to talk about black people in therapy. All these different things that I think were a part of their existence. And so now I say, if I have this trauma, I go to my therapist. And I say that proudly. And people clap when I say it. 20 years ago, I said, I'm going to my therapist. They're like, that brother crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm triggered. And I need therapy. And so it's like, but really, it's like, people look at you and be like, there's this stigma. And so, I had to like understand that, and I've grown to forgive them. I think it's hard for me to forgive my dad because as a man, I feel the responsibility of leadership. And I feel like he should have felt that responsibility too, and I don't think he did. And I think just man to man, I have a hard time forgiving that because, I say this with all respect and things like that. God has privileged me and given me the resources and communities to be a better man than he is. And that's how I should be in so many ways, should be, but I am leaps and bounds better than he is. And so I feel the responsibility of ensuring that my people feel protected and provided for and loved and valued and cherished and all these different things that he does not feel. And so it is a bit of a challenge for me to forgive that man to man. But it's easy to forgive, the predicament in which we find ourselves because I'm understanding of his system, his structure, where he comes from, and how that has made him who he is.
Very mature, very wise for you to say that. A lot of
Yeah.
children are unable to be objective when it comes to their childhood and their parents. You
Hmm.
know, I think a lot of children, when we grow up, teenagers too, we think everything is about us. My parents are drinking every day because of me. My dad
Right.
is this way because of me. It's like, no, they're human. They have their own issues. And it doesn't, like you said, doesn't excuse anything, but it is something to look at, you know? And I
Absolutely.
know, okay, yeah, so, and I can totally attest to that. I was raised with my father and my grandmother. I didn't get close to my mother until I was 19. And I
Mm,
really feel that what helped me, because I was angry, obviously, I was mad, but
yeah.
like in a subtle way. Like I would just be mean to her, you know? Like,
Wow.
I'm mad, you know?
Yeah.
You weren't there for me on my birthdays, my graduation. But what I did is I started to look at her as a woman and not my mama. Kind of like what you said about looking at them as humans. And I think it will
Yeah.
help other people who went through similar, experiences like me and Greg is
Yeah.
your parents are human. They don't know everything when they get here. And although you might have done it differently, you may do it better than your parents did. Like it is what it is, you know?
Yeah.
And we gotta move
Yeah.
forward.
And the only way to move forward is through forgiveness. There is no other way. There's no other way. You can't outwork it. You can't make enough money. You can't bust enough girls down. You can't, whatever. Like there is no other way other than to forgive. And it's very liberating. It's very liberating. I had to forgive my mother to trust women. I had to give my father to become a better man. Like these are connected, interconnected. And so understanding that and giving myself permission to forgive, and also permission to implement boundaries. Because forgiving ain't just forgetting. It's saying that um, I will. I had a mentor tell me forgiveness is forgiving what happened, and giving grace for what will. That doesn't mean that you have to, um, you know, be completely boundaryless. So, just things to consider. I still have boundaries with my parents. I'll also forgiving what happened and giving grace for what will.
No, yeah, Greg, that's real good, man. The boundaries especially. I had to learn like, yeah, I can be the child and still have boundaries up with my
Yeah,
parent. Because
absolutely.
parents who weren't able to raise their children effectively or properly, they tend to have struggled with boundaries in the first place, you know? So when
Correct.
the child learns this thing about boundaries, it's like, I know my mom, she struggled with that. She would get so
Mhm.
offended when I would tell her, like, this is just how I am. And
Yeah.
like, you're just not coming into my life. This is like, you need to respect just how I've been raised to be. And it can be challenging. And I won't lie, like, from time to time, like, the little girl in me, it still has flashback feelings of like, I wish I didn't have to go through that. I wish I didn't, you know what I'm saying? So, I I just wanted to share that. Like I know other
Uh,
people
no,
feel
that's
that too.
real. That's real. That's real.
Yes, but as it pertains to love and family and relationships, like I told you it's Love Month here at the Kamerie Gibson Show in October. So I wanted to learn what Greg thinks about love. So I'm gonna pull
Hmm.
up my whiteboard right behind
Yeah.
me, and I
Yeah.
have the word love in the middle, and I'm just gonna like write different ideas or words that come to mind when you think about love. So just first things first, what is love to you?
Love is God. I think that is the first thing for me. I think it's spiritual.
Love is
Um, I am not sure. I say this, and I want to say this respectfully because I know there are other religions that may be listening and people who may be um, whatever. But I don't think there's a. I think the standard of love cannot be found in the world. I think it is a spiritual thing. And my next word is love is perfect. And it does not mean that love is absent of challenges, but love has a way of covering a multitude of things. And I think that is the perfection of love, and I think that comes from its connection to God. I think love is accountability, and particularly self accountability, and sacrifice, and long suffering. Um, but I also think love is beautiful. I think love is beautiful. I think it is the purest, the most beautiful thing that we can ever have. And when we have it, it is that's what I'm looking for. When we get that love, that real love, it can't be taken away. But there's a term I'm looking for. It's
indispensable, everlasting.
everlasting. Love is everlasting.
I like that. Those are
Yeah.
deep. You got any more,
Yeah.
or you want me to read them off to you? Yeah.
Yeah, you can read them out. I think I covered it.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so according to Greg, let me get closer so I can.
Hmm.
I like this. It's got me thinking about a little heavy. Okay,
Hmm.
so according to Love with Greg, love is perfect. You can't see that side. Love is perfect. Love covers a multitude of things. I really like that. Love is beautiful. Love is self continuity, sacrifice, suffering. Love is everlasting. Love is God. I really like that one. I think
Hmm.
it sums up everything. And another thing you said is that there is no standard of love that can be found in the world.
Hmm.
So, with that one,
Hmm.
can you pull more out of that one?
Mm.
Why do you, there's no standard of love that can be found in the world?
I think that um, the world replicates love, but even that replication is what we find in scripture. I think when you think about love, even from a world standard, they would say like love is being patient and love is being kind and love is being slow to anger, all these different things. I think we replicate those things, but they aren't natural to the world. They aren't they aren't found. There is no blueprint outside of the Bible for love. Any blueprint that exists is very much directly connected, correlated with the spiritual aspect of love. And so I think, anytime I am looking for love or am trying to define what love is, I'm thinking, who is God? And if I can get clarity on who God is, I can get clarity on what love is. But there's nowhere I can look in the world for that same connection. I can't look in the world and say, what is this? Um, and then trying to find a correlation or connection to love that doesn't exist, in my opinion.
I really like that. I'm not sure if you're into, astrology and stuff because you are
Mm,
into Christianity.
yeah.
But I know you're a Libra,
Mhm.
technically. And
Yeah.
Libra is ruled by planet Venus, which is the planet of love, which is
Mm,
ultimately why I chose this month to be Love Month because of the Venus energy.
mm.
Um, I totally forgot where I was going with that, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to move on into a little bit more coming of age, Greg.
Okay.
What has been the most difficult challenge for you in becoming who you are today?
Man, another deep one. What's been the most difficult challenge? Finding out who that is has been the most difficult challenge because I think who I was and who I am, who I'm meant to be are totally different people. Um, I know who I was, and through counseling in Christ, I am who I am, and I still very much believe that I don't even know I haven't even met who I'm meant to be yet. And journeying and staying connected to self, even in those changes of self, is challenging. It's like a marriage. It's like a marriage where it's like people talk about the most challenging thing in a marriage, and I'm not married. Let me be clear. Um, the most challenging thing in a marriage is saying yes to the person in 20 years because they will not be the same person that they are who you are at 40 and who you are at 20. And having to say yes to that person continuously is a challenge. I think saying yes to myself in every iteration of myself is a challenge because you get comfortable and complacent and cool with a certain level of yourself, and then God or whomever you believe, whatever you believe. For me, God shifts me into another perspective, another place. And now I have to say yes to this person, which is not the person that I was just last year. All these different things, and so, and it's inevitable that you go through a period of disconnection with oneself. It's inevitable because, and I don't think it's a bad thing. What is bad is staying disconnected. You have to find ways to reconnect. But it's not bad to disconnect from self and say, there is a version of me that has not existed yet, and I want to get there. How do I get there? And sometimes that means disconnecting from self and, at a time you reconnect kind of thing. But I think that's the hardest part. The hardest part is having those moments, feeling those moments, and having to do the work to be like, okay, who am I now? And what do I need to do to say yes to me now?
Wow, 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 man. I
I don't
like
know if that made
that.
sense. I hope so.
Oh, yes, I like it so much. I'm listening to everything, and I didn't want to forget from earlier.
Mhm.
You were going to church even when you were in high school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How did that come about? Where did you develop this relationship with the church, religion,
Yeah.
spirituality?
Yeah. Born in the church, born and raised in the church. Before my mother slipped into alcoholism, um, she was very heavily involved in the church. And so that was part of my very, very younger upbringing. But then as my parents started to have their challenges, I got really close to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who is about as churchy and as saved as any, grandmother from Mississippi. She is, oil in her purse, prayer closet saved, and so being close to her and connecting to her and really trying to connect to some kind of motherly being, um, she dragged me to church until I actually wanted to go. And I'll say too, when I talked about that community, a lot of the community, another reason I got this old soul because I hung around old people at the church. But these old people never missed a moment to tell me you had something earlier, like when I know I was different. People were telling me I was different from like a young age. They never missed a moment to be like, hey, like there's something different on your life. Fall into that. Don't they said those things. And so The church has been critical to me spiritually and personally because so much of what I believe personally in terms of love and justice and liberation is directly connected to my experience with church and Bible. Um, and it has been the singular most consistent, the singular most revelatory, the singular most powerful entity in my life. There is no entity, there is no structure that has been more influential to me than the church, making space for church hurt and making space for not everybody has a connection to or may have a good experience with church. And certainly we have those. I have those. But it has been the most constant and consistent thing for me.
Excuse me, I wanted to point that out because I think it's very important. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, I was dragged to church until I wanted to go myself.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really like that. A lot of young people have been turned away, turned off by it completely.
Yeah.
And when I meet young people like you, like Charles, as passionate about it as y'all are, still incorporating God into your everyday conversations, making it cool, I think it's special. So
Yeah.
for the audience, just to give you some context about how I met Greg, I met him at the Young Adults Willer Avenue Baptist Bible Studies on Thursdays. Every Thursday after classes, I know I will go to Bible study and get a free meal and learn about.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty cool. But things took a turn and stopped in 2020. I remember everything just kind of halted after that. Life has been life ever since.
Yeah.
My next question for you, Greg, we're almost about to wrap up, is what would you tell the younger Greg?
What I tell the younger Greg? I would say directly from scripture to the younger Greg, eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, neither has it been conceived in the heart. All the things. And so I would say that. And I would also say to love yourself now, practice that now, because it's going to be super, super important in the future.
Alrighty, my last question for you is what do you hope to see more of in the world?
Ooh. I want to see more of that perfect love, that that love that covers. I want to see people carrying out justice. I am wearing this Malcolm X sweatshirt, and so let me say a phrase that he coined: carrying out justice by any means necessary. And hoping to see the world get to a place of total freedom, total liberation of systems and structures and silos and segregation. And I'm hoping I want to see more. And if this don't make sense, you can cut it out. But I want to see more childlike imagination and dreaming and vision and acceptance. We become adults and we get in these social norms and these societal norms, whatever the case may be. And children have this uncanny way to accept, to hang out with, to dream, and to not be afraid to try things. They'll touch a stove just because it looks interesting, even though we know it'll burn. Like they're not afraid to fail. All these different things that children carry. I wish more adults in the world would just occupy the space of a child and show up in the world with this childlike curiosity. And I think if we did that, we'd be in a lot better place.